Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and today's video is going to be the celebratory Q&A for 5,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much for being here and having accompanied me in the last 10 months. I've done one of these for 1,000 subscribers, so I'll link it down in the description below. And without any further ado, let's get started, because we have stuff to talk about: personal questions, autism, queerness, and indeed, witchcraft and activism. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi, which is an alternative to Patreon that takes less from creators. And on there you can do a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me, Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And if you decide to support me there, thank you so very much. You find all the subjects and the actual questions that I answer time-stamped in chapters in the description down below. So if you want to skip to one or the other, you can easily do that. I'm going to start with personal questions because I think in the other Q&A I did the other way around. So we're going personal, and then specifically to autism and queerness, and then we're going to witchcraft. And the first one was very simple. How are you and Raven? Oh, thank you so much for asking. That's really nice. I'll be honest, and you know what? Maybe this is an excuse to be honest. Great, amazing. I would love to tell you great and amazing, and there are indeed some great and amazing things going on in our lives. However, unfortunately, our health especially is taking a bit of a hit in July, because I spoke about it on Instagram. We caught COVID again. The first time that we caught COVID in 2020 is what left us permanently disabled with long COVID. And unfortunately, this time around, it's not going much better. My lung capacity is severely reduced, and it has an impact physically, it has an impact mentally. So if you hear me talk about being burned out much more often than I even used to, that's also due to that. Don't get me wrong, I am extremely grateful for a lot of things. One of these is this channel, because it's a very easy way for me to get that kind of connection to people that doesn't completely drain me if instead I go out and actually am physically around people. That kind of social energy I don't quite have. But this is doable, and I get to chat with you, and then you leave me a comment and I chat back. You have noticed by now I read all the comments, I reply to pretty much all of them, probably most of them now, because the last 2 videos on TERFs have got a lot of comments. But I read every single one of them, and I still answer and reply to most of them, even the bad ones. It's just something that I do. Yeah, in short, we're a bit proven, but we try our best. Oh, and tiny bit of a detail there, since you asked about both myself and Raven. Myself and Raven are well in the fact that we have been now together for a decade. Like, we literally just celebrated our 10-year anniversary from the first time that we spoke and then we met. So in that we're good. This is a very, very interesting question. I think I got it anonymously, but I feel you. Sibling, I feel you. Any hair dye tips for curly hair? Your hair always looks so lovely. I have dark curly hair and want to go green, but I'm so scared about the upkeep. I'm also autistic and chronically ill and struggle with aging upkeep sometimes, as well as I'm concerned about possible damage and dryness and how to deal with caring for my hair. Oh my God, it's like talking to a mirror. Green is complicated because green requires you to go white underneath. I've done blue twice in my life, and because cold colors are required to take out not only all the color but also all the brassiness, so toners and stuff, it's a very heavy kind of bleach. It's doable by a professional. Most of my color and things I do at home, like it's me and Raven, and we do it to each other, except for the haircut really. We used to do that as well though. From personal experience, I can tell you this: going cold colors, it's a bit heavy. It's doable, but it's a bit heavy. And usually what I had to do once I did that was to grow out my hair, because the bleach ruined it. So the first 6 months of this channel, you have seen me with black hair, which is my natural color, and blue tips. And that was the reason why my tips were bleached a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And so I just grew it out. So green could be. Maybe we start for something warmer pink. Pink is relatively easy, like this is not bleach, this is dyed, which has a bit of bleach in it, but not so much as to like make it white and a blank canvas. So this is what I do now because it's easier and easier to maintain. However, and I need to say this because I just rediscovered it, along with colors and bleach and take care of that, whatever you use as a leave-in or as a gel makes a lot of difference. And I say that because recently I've tried to dig back into my old hair routine because I saw pictures of me in 2021 with these amazing ringlets, and nowadays it's much more loose, it's much more just frizzy, and I didn't understand why. In my head I changed nothing, but no, I went back in my emails with old orders of hair care stuff, and I realized that I had changed since my leave-in conditioner. So the best leave-in conditioner that I now have got back is, to me, to my kind of hair, which is really fine as well, is the Kinky Curly Not Today. Along with that, I use the Curly Jelly from Umberto Giannini. The Curly shampoo and Curly conditioner are also good, but the gel is what I swear by these days. And from time to time, I use the K18 leave-in mask, and I used to use the Olaplex number 3 as well. I haven't got it in a while, but that is usually good stuff as well. More than my hair, next time ask me about skincare, because that is something that I know really well. I still look up ingredients for everything that I use for myself, whether it's hair care, skincare, makeup, even if I don't use that much, because I got very much into it like around 10 years ago. So I'm very aware of what is comedogenic for my skin, what has silicones for my hair. For a very good while, I used to co-wash. Now, not necessarily all the time. Like there's the odd time that I still co-wash only, so just wash with conditioner. Nowadays, every time or every other time, I do wash with shampoo as well. And I'll be honest, doing my hair is the most energy draining thing of my hygienic upkeep. There are some times that I just wash my hair, leave it in the towel, and then know that I don't have to show my face anywhere, so I can just keep the shapeless blob that it's given to me that way. I've done it recently. If I took a picture during those days, I'll put it here, but if not, reasonably so. So I feel you, I get you. Curly hair takes a lot of care, much more than straight hair, because there's a specific way to dry it, there's a specific way to style it, there's a... I know what you mean. I don't feel though that the color makes a difference in that, like because it's curls, you still have to do that kind of stuff whether there's the color or not. But that's my experience. Have you always been a cat person, a tuxedo cat person? I am a cat person as well, and my first cat was a tuxedo cat. I have always been a cat person, yes. I never asked, it's not true, I did ask for a puppy to my parents at some point, but because when I was 3 years old, I got a plushie of a husky dog, and so after that I just wanted to get an actual husky. That was never an option, but around 7 years old, we found a cat close to the farm where I used to live with my grandparents. She was with me until I moved away for university. And she was actually a tortoise shell, like European cat. My first few cats were tortoise shell. And Tuxedo, it's been since Whiska, who I got in 2014. As soon as I got my first flat, that it was just for me. The first rule that I gave myself was like, right, we go to a shelter and we get a cat because we manage the incredible luck of having a roof that will keep us safe, and the least that we can do is to share that roof. And so I was actually living at the time almost next door to the cat shelter in North London, so I just went there, and Whiska was I think the only tuxedo cat that was there. And the reason I say I chose him, he chose me. Basically what happened at the shelter was that you would wear all this protective stuff, wash your hands between cat, and you would be let into these like human-sized cages where every cat would have their space. And that was a way to get to know them and, you know, see how you like each other. And all the cats were actually really nice, but most of them, actually all of them except Whiska, did quite not understand their own strength. So to play, they would go at me with their claws, and I left the cages as if I had stigmata. I was completely bleeding all over, until I went to Whisker's cage. It was the last cage, actually, that they let me in. And Whisker was very, like, chilled and, do I have to give you attention now? But what surprised me of him was that he was not only very chill, but very easy to communicate with. So he let me pet him for a while, like for 5 minutes or something. And then at some point, clearly he was done with it. And he just went at me with his zampino, with his paw, but without claws. And somehow that told me, see, this is the cat that you can communicate with. And the rest is history. He has been my closest flatmate and familiar for 8 long, beautiful years that were not enough. So I guess I kinda then got onto Tuxedo Cat because he was a tuxedo cat. And accidentally, when we moved to this place at the beginning of 2023, a month after we moved here, I follow a couple of shelters here in Cardiff. And around a month after we moved here, I saw a picture on one of these shelters that a person was trying to rehome their 2 tuxedo cats. And when I saw that, I don't know, I took it as a sign. I took it, I don't know, because when Whisker passed away and it was so sudden, one of the things that I kept repeating was, I will never want another cat because nobody can take Whisker's space, and nobody truly can. When I saw that these 2 cats, they were actually older as well. They were around 10 years old, and it's harder to rehome older cats because people like kittens, I guess. They are in perfect good shape, Stella and Artois, but they were like 10 years old already. So yeah, I saw them. I sent a message to the person that handles that shelter. They told me that there was already someone in line for them, but if it didn't go through, they would have let me know. Indeed, it didn't go through, and so the rest is history. We went first to see them and to meet them and to see how they liked us. And I think we got the mark of approval because Artois, who I've since learned really lives her own life and barely acknowledges your existence. Well, when we went there to just meet the cats, Artois came to sit on my lap. Never before, never again. But that gave us the mark of approval of the cats. And so a week later, not even, then we went and we took them home. And the rest is history. They are such good kitties. They are so well behaved. Do you still have your other video channels or any public blogs / Tumblr or other that you would be willing to share? So, and I don't mind sharing my main Tumblr, not the Astarion Tumblr. As I mentioned before, this is not my first rodeo. Will I share the first few channels that I've opened? No. Will I share the most recent channel before this? I don't mind. It's called Dem Fatales Video Essays, and as you can guess from the name, we were making video essays there. It's both, I mean, all the channels are both mine and Raven's, but that was much more pushed that way because we were present in all the videos. And as you can guess, we were talking about intersectionality, racism, misogyny, all those kind of things. The videos there took a long time to make every time. They were very scenographic and had like set design and stuff, so it took its time. And it took not only a lot of research, but at the time, the way that I thought video essays were supposed to be made was you need to read everything that exists about this topic, and then, if your brain is good enough to remember, you make connections. I was never taught properly how to do essays at school, especially because the way that I was taught in Italy, like from elementary to high school, even to university, was in a very repetitive way, in the sense that you were not allowed to express original thought or critical thinking. All you could do was report quotes and things that someone else had already written in books, and you could cite it. And I think that's still the style that they teach things in Italy. Very different from the UK. In the UK, you have to express original thought, whether you actually have it or not. And you have to piece together things, which is very good for critical thinking, but it doesn't give you as much of an encyclopedic knowledge of things. So I try to straddle those two methods. On Dame Fatales, I got a bit lost on the research side. There is a video essay that I have, two video essays actually, that I've tried to prepare for Dame Fatales for 2-3 years now. One was about women competition, the queen bee syndrome, which I mentioned in the second video about TERFs. I sort of used something of that in a video that was about Liz Truss and the fact that the 3 prime ministers that are female in the UK were all from the Conservative parties. That's the last video essay that we made on Dame Fatales. So I used some of that research, but the video that I meant to make, which was about Not Like the Other Girls, that the amount of research got me stuck because I was like, I don't know how to reorganize all this information. I have since evolved, which is a very useful thing. And the way that we have evolved and the way that then we've made video essays here, so Capitalism and Cottagecore, Why Are So Many Witches TERFs, part 1 and 2, a little bit of the Catholicism and Christianity and witchcraft. That style comes from literally the everyday discussions that Raven and I have. And I am told that people usually don't do that kind of thing and chill. Sometimes we chill, sometimes we play Baldur's Gate 3, but most of the time we have that kind of discussion and we try to understand the world by saying our take to each other, and then the other brings more information. Oh, I've read this, oh, I've heard this. And that's how we work in video essays now, which is more sustainable, and it's also the reason why here I can do video essays without a script, while everything that is on Dame Fatales was actually a written essay that then was put on a teleprompter and I could read from. And I think you can tell that the way that I do things here is more approachable as well. I still love everything that I've done on Dame Fatales. I genuinely believe that it deserved more attention. The work that I've done there is incredibly valuable, if you ask me. Maybe I'm partial, but it is incredibly valuable. There's the first video that we made was on fatphobia and racism in Italy, and then we did stuff on medical misogyny, on the aristocracy here in the UK and the classism. It was incredibly valuable, but I guess it was less accessible, and that's the reason why it never took off. However, I've heard, legend has it, that the reason why I got the job, enormous air quotes because it's not paid, the role in Glitter Cymru to do training and education comes from the fact that people from Glitter had seen my video essays on Dame Fatales and saw that I knew things and I could explain them in a relatively accessible way, and that's how I was asked to then do training for Glitter. So, you know, you aim at the moon, you land among the stars. Even if astronomically it's a wrong concept, you know what it means, and it works. Anything else to link? I have an official personal Tumblr in which I actually share witchcraft stuff, reblog mainly. I can share that, I'll put the link in the description below. I have other Tumblrs that I will not share. Roland Laverne asked me multiple questions. Most of them are witchcraft, so I'll answer them later. But the last one was favorite band. And I am always so excited when people ask me about music. So thank you, Rowan. Please ask me more about music. I was planning on doing a video just on the connections of witchcraft and music, because these I can happily share. My formation, my background is in music and music business. And to be fair, I studied music business just because it gave me more chance to actually work in music than not just trying to be an artist myself. Also, the fact that I cannot play and read music for the life of me should have suggested to me that being a singer or that kind of thing wasn't exactly the thing that I should have aimed for. But I studied and worked in the music industry up until the mid-2010s, and it's something that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I actually was doing it because I had a kind of belief and passion in the industry that maybe I was the only one having that way. It was a bit dire, especially when I ended up working in major record labels, because I was the only one having this kind of hopeful look to, oh my God, we are changing people's lives. No, that's not a very shared view within the industry. But I saw it that way, which is the reason why to me, it never really mattered what kind of band I was working for, but I was really happy to know that the tiny things that I was doing was helping to bring their work and their music to their fans, because their lives will be changed by this kind of stuff. That was the reason why I wanted to work in the music industry to begin with. My favorite band might be a tie by now. The standard answer would be the Cranberries, because they very much changed my life. And I haven't made this noticeable before, I think. But you might be able to notice now that on my ancestor altar, around here, there's a picture of Dolores or Jordan. And that's why there's the plushie also of the daffodils, because a song of the Cranberries was Daffodil Lament. Maybe one day I'll talk about that. I don't know how witchy relevant it is. But Dolores was incredibly kind to me and really changed my life. And it's one of the few things that ever gave me the hope and energy to pursue things beyond what was set in front of me, which was a life of marginalizations and mockery in Italy. And I owe it to her. The reason why I learned English was so that I would be able to understand her songs and write her letters. So I am, yes, the Cranberries is the main answer. The second answer is the Veils, who are a British/New Zealand band. Their main singer is Finn Andrews. How to explain the Veils? The Veils have made the one song that, despite knowing a lot of music, I am always able to say, if you ask me to bring down all the music that I love and like into one song, I will always say my favorite song is Calliope by The Veils. I love Calliope so much that actually it was played. It was, I think, the first dance that Raven and I had at our wedding. Finn was so kind to actually play it at a gig in London, even at a point where they weren't playing it live anymore, because I told him, we actually had this at our wedding. If you were to play it, it would be amazing. So yeah, the Veils are also in that list now. Please do ask me more questions about music. I can't wait to share them. Did you know that I took pictures of the first outing that Florence Welch of Florida the Machine ever did? At the time I was taking pictures instead of making reviews because I thought that it was easier. But yeah, I have a lot of stories. Ask me about music. Actually, I have a Witchcore playlist on Spotify that I can share. I'll put it down in the description below. Let's go into autism and queerness. And I understand why the two things mostly are perceived to go together. I don't mind. So first is an anonymous question that asks me, fellow autist here, I love the idea of autist or autist, because in my head, and it's probably a false friend, it means someone who drives. And I think one of the main reasons why I can't drive a car yet, I don't have a license, is exactly because of my autism. So it feels like compensation for that. Anyway, fellow autist here, what made you realize your neurodivergence? What made you decide to seek official diagnosis? How does being autistic influence your witchcraft? What made me realize my neurodivergence? I was in denial for a very long time, forever, basically, until I met Raven. And Raven had to deal with some behaviors of mine that to me were completely normal. It's how I handled the world. And Raven knew for a fact that they weren't. And yet, even after being told that, I was in complete denial and rejection of the idea, because autism in Italy, like a lot of things that are associated in general with mental health, which it shouldn't, in my perception, autism be associated necessarily with mental health. Not because mental health deserves stigma, it really doesn't, but it's two different things, and I think it's also something that they're trying now to bring together, which they shouldn't, which is behavioral, as in a consequence of something that has happened, and so how mental health has been affected, and something that is intrinsic, like basically the structure of how our brain and thoughts work, which is what autism is. So that's, and that's how it took me time to come to terms with my neurodivergence, because in Italy it's considered a disability in the worst possible case. There is no disability that is considered a good thing. Italy is racist, Italy is ableist, Italy is under a mob mentality, and I'm pretty sure that if there's any average Italian person that is watching this, will feel immediately like saying something in the comments to mock me, like, ah, you don't know how good you have it, or, oh, now say it without crying. That's the standard. There's no chance to actually have a reasonable conversation with an average Italian person. I'm really lucky that the few people that I'm still in touch with, my basically brother, Lorenzo, who lives in Milan, and Sofia Righetti, which I've mentioned in my serendipity video, which is also about queerness, by the way. There are the few decent people. They are the outliers, and they are beaten because of what they do and how reasonable and how fair they try to be. So because of that, I denied the possibility for a very long time. Like, something that I've done forever for stimming is just do this. I don't even notice when I do it at times. I've started to notice it because my ex used to tell me, literally, stop doing that, stop undulating, just crazy people do that. And when you are exposed to so much ableism everywhere, also the representation of autism that you have in media, they're starting to get better, but there's either the situation a la Rain Man, where you are unmanageable, but at least you do something useful, or you are the destroyment of your parents because there's nothing that makes sense and you just pull tantrums. Meltdowns are not tantrums, by the way. Like, you should see the way that they feel on us to think that they are tantrums. And because of that, again, I was in denial for a very long time. I was worried that more of my agency would be taken away from me. And of course, I don't want that. So that's the kind of resistance that I've had to concede to my neurodivergence, and then realizing, okay, it's likely autism. I think the main thing that Raven noticed that to me, again, it was normal, it was how I handled the world, how dare you say something against it, was that every 2 to 3 months, I would need time to reset. My reset consisted in being alone, locked in my room. I would receive text messages or emails. I would very unlikely be able to open them at all. And I would have either radio or TV shows, completely mindless stuff in the background. And that was me rebuilding and recharging my social battery. And when I did it to Raven, and Raven was in Cardiff and I was in London, and suddenly I started not to reply to her texts, rightfully she got worried. And when I explained to her, oh, no, this is completely normal, this is how I do things, that started to suggest to her that that was not normal and that was actually autistic burnout. And that is something that I have had forever. And because it was never suggested to me that it was anything but a tantrum, I just found ways that seemed more and more acceptable to people for me to do that. When I was working in record companies or in television, and technically that was my dream job, and I worked so hard to get there, even doing that, every couple of months, I had to take a week off completely just to lock myself in my room. And if you ask me, I wasn't feeling bad, I didn't have bad feelings, I just needed to recharge. That's literally what I'd always call it. I'm recharging my batteries. And yeah, that was the main thing that was extremely noticeable. And then I had weird things, like I was able in university to learn books cover to cover by memory if they were color-coded. So there's that kind of stuff. What made me decide to seek official diagnosis? Here in the UK, autism is seen differently. Raven's little brother has gone through the assessment as a child. Raven has gone through the assessment a couple of years ago. And seeing it that way helped me understand that it was a way to understand what my limits were and how society could support me if I was in social context. So, for example, in 2019, I went back to school because I wanted to learn more about biology and sciences. My background is mainly in media, and I never learned chemistry, biology, biochemistry. It's just something that was never there. It's something that you would study in university in Italy. You would start it there. You don't have it in high school. You really don't have it in elementary school. And what I was doing at the time, I wanted to understand better scientific stuff, to read scientific studies, to understand better health, to advocate better for myself and for Raven, basically. Doing that was really interesting. I was also in classes with suddenly 16-year-old again, doing their A-levels in biology and biochemistry, and so was I all of a sudden. And I didn't understand why certain things wouldn't work for me. All I knew was that I was dyslexic, and for that I was given support. But at the time, if I had known that I was also autistic, there would have been support there for that as well. I had to withdraw from that course 3-4 months in, because the kind of pressure that they were putting me under, and from my side, evidently not being able to present them enough reasons other than I can't do this way, they were just leaving me behind, basically. So understanding that a diagnosis helps with those kind of things, which shouldn't be the case, like self-diagnosis is absolutely valid. Unfortunately, in a lot of things, not so much here in the UK, but still enough to be too much. To get access to certain resources, you need to have a proven diagnosis. And so that's the reason why I am going through the pathway now. I had my first appointment like 1.5 years ago. It was like a 2-hour thing. And I've just received all the questionnaires to go through myself and my wife. So that I think in 6 weeks' time, I'll be offered the full assessment, which is like an entire day. Oh, that's gonna be fun. How does being autistic influence my witchcraft? I will talk more about it in the witchcraft questions, but it's a very fine line between I am so good at routines, I know exactly how to do, in the order of which doing it, it's amazing, I feel so on point, to oh my God, I have a very precise list of things that need to be done in a certain way, and if I don't have the energy to do them in a certain way, nothing is worth doing. I'll just sit here, grow mold, and die. It's a hard balance to strike between those two things, and autism pulls in both sides. Sugar Dust asks me as well. As an autistic queer person myself, I absolutely love and admire how open and honest you are about your intersecting identities and how they make you who you are. You're one of the few openly autistic and queer witches I've seen on social media, and in a space like witchcraft, I feel like that is so important to share. Thus, love does. I was wondering, how do you think your autism and witchcraft intersect, if they do? It's pretty much what I just said about that fine line of I am so good at organizing and making a list and having a routine, to my routine is oppressing me and I will not be able to do anything if I don't do things in a certain order, so I might as well do nothing. Has witchcraft ever helped you with autistic burnout, meltdowns, sensory issues, or other such parts of being autistic? In short, how do you think being autistic and being queer inform your witchcraft practice? Raven came to help, because I was like, I don't know, to me everything is just normal. I have a very hard time to do self-reflection in that sense, like I can't quite look at myself under the lens. To me is normal. So in terms of autism influencing witchcraft, yes, because I've developed special interests that are related to witchcraft. One of the things that makes my brain click the most, and I don't share it enough, is about electional astrology. So planetary timing, planetary hours, calculating the values of planetary alignments based basically on Christian astrology by William Lilly and the Ptolemaic tables. I don't know, I've always had a knack for maths before getting into trigonometry, and it was kind of something that I always really liked because it sort of made sense. You don't fuck around with it, it's just what it is. And electional astrology is very close to that. You have to do calculations that way. There's a bit of geometry because you have to calculate actually where the planets are, and but also, yeah. So that's one thing that definitely, because I do it, I think it affects my witchcraft in the sense that when I do a spell that I know is super well timed, and oh my goodness, it's I think that enhances my own belief in any kind of magical workings that I do, which therefore reinforces its effect in the world, because belief is what technically helps us manifest. So that's one thing, that's one influence. And the other way around on witchcraft and autism, a lot of the ways that I've applied routines that I need for my autism have given me a very steady daily routine, so that I might not cast a spell for months, but I do something witchy every day, and that never makes me question my witchiness. And that's apparently useful, I hear, because there's a lot of people that sometimes worry about, am I witchy enough if I don't do spells or don't do things? I don't do necessarily spells that often. I should do them more often, to my standard. I should do them more often. I shouldn't, actually. But on the other side, I think I've shown it in my first vlog. I have certain rituals that I do every day in a certain way, and that is part of my practice. I have a certain order with certain things to say when I do my candles for Vesta. I have a certain order and certain things to say when I do my candles for Venus. I have a way to wake up the house. I have a way to say goodnight to the house, and all of that is probably the natural way that things develop for me, because of the way that I need to order things that comes from my autism. On how my queerness informs my witchcraft, I will send you to the Serendipity video, which was done around Pride, where I discussed that. I think, in short, it very much helps to not be as limiting, as reductive as the feminine and masculine, and it's just two boxes rather than a spectrum, when anything that is spiritual is so beyond the limited way that we understand gender, sex, all those kind of things. So that's in short the way that queerness is very useful for that. It helps you think outside of the box, which is also what autism does. So I also understand the overlap there. Wild and Witchy asks me, how did you discover that you're autistic? I'm currently self-diagnosed and love hearing other people's story. It's basically what I said before. A lot of resistance, and then Raven observed some behaviors that to me were completely normal. It's how I handle the world. It has worked for a long time. Why is that a problem? Because it's very hard to maintain social relationships and jobs if you need to disconnect because the world burns you out. And yeah, that was made notice to me. The way that I stim, the way that I look, I've noticed it now in the camera that I've started to do my stimming of back and forth. And again, because that was steeped in stigma, again, my ex kept saying every time that I did this, oh, stop doing that, just crazy people do that, which in simple terms, she meant autistic people. Are we crazy? No, we're not. We think differently, we do things differently. On some things, I would dare say, we are more efficient and valid than others. We have our strengths, like other people have their strengths. And also, very hardly two autistic people have the same kind of way to manifest their autism. So, yeah, this idea that when you're part of a minority, you need to represent the entire minority with what you say, not the case. So if anything I said, you're autistic and it doesn't resonate with you, it's completely fair. You're picking from other sides of the spectrum. It's completely fair. This is my experience. It's happening. We're going to witchcraft, which is kind of the reason why originally we are here. And there's also a bit of activism there. So there you go. Because it's activist Twitch, they come together. And because this video is already 38 minutes as I am editing it, guess what? You're getting a treat. This is the part of the video that will talk about the personal, autism and queer questions. On the next video, we're gonna have all witchcraft and activism crammed in there, well organized, and I get 2 videos. So I see you in the next video, and don't forget to ask the patriarchy.